before we get on with this video, I would just like to say I've had to edit the titles a little bit, as I did try and make them Christmassy and, you know, chuck snow in there, but over time I've just realised that the snow, I think the snow is having an impact on the actual quality of the titles, so I've had to take that out. But, you know, besides that, it's all the same. But yeah, it's a bit of a sad thing. I just wanted to put this in here to explain the difference. You know, it's not a cock-up, it's an actual choice of mine to change it, but yeah. Anyways, on with the video. Hello and welcome back to the Bored Whovian YouTube channel, and it is day 6 of the 14 days of Doctor Who, and if I don't sound as upbeat as I have in the other videos, it's because I've had to watch the end of time, so I'm naturally kind of in a really quite bad mood. I've got to admit I've cried a little bit, and yeah, I'm a bit sad because I've had to watch that episode again. You know, it traumatised me as a 7-year-old, and it still hits me now in 2021 at the age of 19. It still hurts me, but I've got to talk about it. So I'm now thinking I probably should have done a review for part 1 and then done a review for part 2. You know, I should have reviewed part 1 in between both watches, in between the two parts, and mushed them together into one video. Instead, I've watched both and then done one recording, which, you know, considering the state I'm in right now, isn't the best idea, but I've just got to roll with it. So, let's go on with the review. I think with this story, I mean, particularly because it's the only 2 parts which I'm going to have to talk about, I don't know if I'm going to talk about this review in the same way that I do with others, in terms of just going straight through everything that happens almost. As it's a 2-parter, I feel like I'm in a brief, I've got like notes here of what happens, and I'm just going to point and see, like, you know, you should have seen it. I'm going to talk through the main gist of things and what I thought of them and how that affects my opinion on my story. One thing I do know is that part 1 I've always thought is a bit bad compared to the second one. It's a bit silly in places. For example, the way that the Doctor rocks up quite at the start, in that, you know, he's kind of joking around. When you compare it to the end of Waters of Mars, what you expect to be leading into, it's all suddenly jokey. You know, he shuts the TARDIS doors like it's a car, and it's a bit like, why are you making jokes out of everything? Why is this so silly? But you realise the Doctor's kind of escaping his inevitable doom and kind of trying to run away from it. And it's very reminiscent of what happens in the Wedding River Song. You know, he knows he's got a date to die, and he just kind of postpones it. And you're seeing that kind of personality trait here. So yeah, that's that part. Obviously, the Master is in this story, and I mean, the way he is brought back could have been explained a little bit better, because it feels like every time they mention something, they're just bringing some sort of new element in, like, oh, the secret books of Saxon, you know, there is potions of life, and I'm just like, I know writing is making stuff up, but it feels like they were just like, how can we bring him back? And they just kept writing down words, and I was just like, okay. See, I don't really like that scene that much. Also, the way that the woman who picks up his ring, which is teased in The Last of the Time Lords, is just some random woman who we don't know. That's kind of annoying. But yeah, that's not too big a deal. This is something which has annoyed me since it aired. Yeah, it annoyed me at the age of 7, and it annoys me now. But moving on, the Master as a whole in this story, I think he's okay. You know, John Simm's performance, I don't know if it's for everyone. I like him as the Master. He's obviously a lot more manic in this story than he was before, because he's genuinely like dying, and the whole skeleton stuff I don't really mind. The superpowers he gets, I don't know. It's a bit dodgy. You know, the fact that you can just shoot electricity and fly and stuff. I'm just like, that's a bit dodgy. But the way we uncover more about the drums in his head and everything, that is good. That is very good. It's done very well. You know, the moment which he has with the Doctor towards the end of the story, where, you know, he realises it's real, the noise in his head, that's fantastic. as you know, it's something which has tortured him, and suddenly realising there's actually a reason for his insanity. You know, it's a really quality moment between him and the Doctor. The Doctor's almost in fear of what's in his head. But yeah, that's a really nice moment. But the Master, I think, is definitely better in part 2. But I'm just going to go through part 1 roughly. You know, throughout the majority of the story, you have Wilf being visited. Well, not throughout the majority, just in little moments, you have Wilf being visited by this woman dressed in white who we don't know. I'll get more onto her in part 2, but I felt like I just need to mention that. A lot of people have theories about who this woman is in the End of Time in both parts. Russell has said it's the Doctor's mother. Well, not the Doctor's mother. He didn't say it outwardly, but he said that's what his thoughts were. You know, even he said, I'm not going to put anything concrete out there. A lot of people would say that. One thought I had, you know, it could be the Doctor's daughter, because he has a granddaughter, Susan, we don't know who his actual daughter was. Or it could be his wife. His original wife, you know, way back when, who he had children and grandchildren with, potentially. That's something which not many people mention, and it could be that, but who knows. Moving on, obviously, Wilf gets his group of friends together, finds the Doctor. I don't want to mention the scene where they meet up with the Doctor, because suddenly it's all a funny scene after you've just seen the Master, and it's just a bit like, it's just whiplash. But he has a scene talking with Wilf, and it is really nice. As you know, he explains. You see them, despite the comedy at the start, you see this turn that he's been running away from stuff. He's still distressed by what he did in the Waters of Mars, and he's realised he's kind of built his fate, and he doesn't want to live it. He doesn't want to have to face what he's going to have to face up in this story. And he cries with Wilf, and then sees Donna, and it's a good scene. And David Tennant is phenomenal in these 2 episodes. He's absolutely acting his heart out. And I think he's acting his heart out throughout pretty much the majority of his era. But his, Series 4 and the specials, he is on the mark. I don't really know how I'm going to mention this guy, but we have this new character. I think it's Naismith. I don't know what his first name is. I forgot the first name of the character, but, it's played by some actor, which I forgot his name. But he's really good, and he was in the Robin Hood BBC series, and I think he's also in Supergirl. But I've never seen Supergirl, but I know he's in it, and he's a really good actor. So he's playing someone Naismith. Is Stephen Naismith? No, it's not Stephen Naismith. But he's basically looking for the Master, and eventually gets him at the end of the story, setting up the gate. And it's a decent character. You understand the purpose of him. Watching this story after watching, something like Flux, where it feels like there's way too many characters. This is just a 2-parter, not a 6-parter, and it has just the right amount of characters, just the right amount of plot threads. In that, no, they aren't all different plot threads. They're all kind of the same plot thread, just different angles on it. You've got the Doctor seeking something, the Master seeking something, and this man seeking something, and they're all going to meet in the middle. And it works as a part 1. It does function. However, there are silly moments. It's I guess maybe because it was aired on Christmas Day. This is really the Christmas special of the 2. They aren't both a Christmas special, but I can't really review part 1, not review part 2 as well. Sad for me, because part 1 won't make me cry at all. But part 2 is really the gut punch, which I'm still thinking about right now, but we've got to move on. But, yeah, this story, I don't know. It's alright. It's good. It's not bad. It's just, I don't know. If I had to give part 1 something, and I won't, I'm going to review End of Time as a whole. If I could review part 1, I'd maybe give it a 6. It's okay, it's fine. It's silly in parts. It's got a bit of a conflict going on with what it wants to be, because it wants to be part of the story which they want to make in End of Time Part 2, but it's also got to be the Christmas special. So it has these, occasional moments where it kind of cuts the plot off. But it does a good job of setting up what's yet to come, and then the ending's really good to part 1. The ending is fabulous. Suddenly the Master gets control. The Master splices himself amongst the entire population of the planet. Everyone becomes the Master. I don't know how to feel about that, because I've heard some people say that they think it's a bit stupid. I remember seeing that and being like, whoa, what the hell, when I first saw it. And as a result, those are still my thoughts. And I've always thought that's pretty cool and mental, because it's the reaction I had to that cliffhanger was the reaction of the Doctor turning into a Whooping Angel. in Village of the Angels. It was just like, what the hell? How the hell are we getting out of this one? But that isn't the cliffhanger. The real cliffhanger is the Time Lords being revealed, as throughout the entire story you have Timothy Dalton as Rassilon narrating part 1. And you finally find out that voice is the president of the Time Lords. And it's a brilliant cliffhanger, because obviously at that point, well, the Time Lords had already been mentioned, we knew the Time Lords were dead, we didn't think they'd ever come back, and here they are. But so yeah, that nicely moves me into part 2, and it starts off with the Time Lords having a meeting at the High Council, and it's fun watching this, because I'm thinking this is the final day of the war, and I'm thinking it's like the Day of the Doctor's happening right now. And the thing is, in Day of the Doctor, they mention this meeting, because you're there with the general, and they're like the army, and then the High Council obviously are the politicians and everything. They're having a meeting, we're shut off. But in this meeting, they mention the moment. This is the first ever mention of the moment, which maybe motivates Moffat's ideas of what to do later on. But this is the final day of the war, and I do think in that moment, there's someone who's coming out with prophecies, and she basically is coming out with the idea they're all going to die. And I think, I've watched Day of the Doctor now, and I'm like, you don't. So I don't know really what to say there, but we'll move on with that. We've got Donna in the last cliffhanger. She's kind of potentially going to die, because obviously what happens at Journey's End, she, can't remember the Doctor, and if she does, she'll die. She's suddenly starting to remember stuff because of what's happened with the Master. But obviously the Doctor, puts a defence mechanism into her head, so she kills the Masters that are hunting her down, which is a good moment. It feels a bit quick, like that happens very early on in part 2, and it's part of the cliffhanger. It's one of the, like I say in Doctor Who a lot, there's always at least 3 cliffhangers. So with us, we had Time Lords returning, Masters everywhere, Donna might die. Boom, you had that's a hat trick. So with that gets resolved, I think, in the first 10 minutes, for a story which is an hour and 12. So yeah, well, at least that's what it said on iPlayer. But yeah, then we have a really, really lovely scene in the Naismith mansion with the Doctor, Wilf, and the Master. As the Wilf is kind of questioning the Master on the noise in his head, and he kind of describes it all. And you go back to that scene of him as a child, which is filmed for The Sound of Drums, and it's when he's talking about it, you realise that even he is being reasonable about it, going like, this is awful. Like, you can see both the Doctor and him agree on Time Lords, and they both have this kind of thought of that this is wrong. But yeah, when you look at how the Doctor describes this scene in Sound of Drums, you can definitely pull similarities of their attitudes towards their upbringing. But yeah, I don't want to get too stuck on this, because obviously the real meat of the story is way ahead of us. But so this all happens. The Doctor escapes. The Doctor ends up in orbit. They're stuck in orbit with the Vinvoce, which I didn't mention when I was talking about part 1, but I don't even need to. Cactus people, whatever. Not long after this, bloody hell, Rassilon tries to chuck. He successfully chucks a White Point Star, which is on his staff, onto the Earth to create a physical piece of contact with the Master. But just before it's revealed to the Doctor this, he has a really nice sign with Wilf. And it's a lovely scene, as there's a really good question put to the Doctor by Wilf, where he goes, were they changed in their graves? Because he's talking about his wife who's buried there. And, it's a really good question, and that Russell doesn't pull any punches, and he goes, yeah, they would. And it's just sad thinking that they would have changed as well. And then obviously, while Wilf goes rambling on about his life, and goes, oh, you wouldn't want to hear an old man. And then the Doctor reveals he's older. I just love the line where, he goes, we must look like insects to you. And then the Doctor goes, I think you look like giants. And that's a great line. And that's a line which I'd expect from almost every Doctor. That is, or it should be every Doctor who says that line. If a Doctor doesn't say something along the lines of that, then they aren't the Doctor. The way they look upon humanity and view our mortality in a way. But it's such a lovely scene, and the way they get cut off, the last things they say before the Master interrupts them, you got Wilf almost crying because he's just so sad about the Doctor and doesn't want him to die, so he's trying to pass the gun over to him. And you just have the 10th Doctor being so adamant he won't take the gun. And then suddenly he finds out the Time Lords are returning. Boom, got the gun. And that little sudden whoosh from 1 to 10, you know, in terms of, no, I'm not going to have a gun, to suddenly, yep, I'm taking arms straight away, is the shock that you need to give the audience, just to kind of send the signal of, yep, that's what the Time Lords are bringing. They are a massive threat. We need to deal with them. And that's what they're going to be like. So yeah, not long after this, we have the kind of missile shooting scene with Wilf and the male Vin Voce as they're shooting the missiles which are being sent at them by the Master, as the Master is awaiting the return of the Time Lords. And eventually, obviously, the Doctor jumps out of the ship after saying Alonzi for the final time, which is a pretty epic little moment. Then he jumps out and lands through the glass of the Naismith mansion, and I must say, why the hell doesn't he regenerate? Like, why the hell doesn't he regenerate? He's jumped out of a spaceship which is moving at God knows what speed, and, landed through glass, smashed through glass and landed on the floor. Like, he should be gone. I'm like, remember how the 4th Doctor died? I think it's higher, falling at way more of a pace. He should be absolutely gone. Because of the plot, he is not dead, because we need him to die a more tragic death. So not long after this, Rassilon arrives, and I think he arrives just before this, I think, and he actually reverses the Master's, whole plan at the end of Part 1, which really it really gives you an example of how powerful the Time Lords are. Like, this is all child's play to them. The Master's plan is just they're just toying with him, and yeah, it's just a really nice scene as they're discussing their plans. And they reveal the whole idea that they would, ascend to glory and, be free of their bodies and become creatures of consciousness, and while reality around them is destroyed. And it's a great way of summing up what happened in the Time Lord, because it's the first glimpse of the Time Lord we probably get of it actually being there. And it is really nice. And you hear the Doctor list off so many things. And I won't talk about all of them, but, like the Horde of Travesties, the Horde of Travesties, and all this different little things in lore, which I'm assuming have all become Big Finish or comics or books at some point, which I haven't gone into. I haven't really touched on any of the Time War expanded media. I might one day, but I haven't yet. And it is just a nice way of setting up just how dark and, evil they became in the war. But, not too long after this, the Doctor obviously has a standoff between the Master and Rassilon, and just keeps turning around, picking on which one to shoot on. And it's a fantastic scene. Without saying a word, you just see the anger in 10th Doctor's eyes. And as he turns from each one, he starts on Rassilon, changes to the Master, changes back to Rassilon, and then changes back to the Master. And it's just brilliant, just with a little bit of dialogue, with the Master just going, "You never would, you coward." He's just... It's just a brilliant scene. And then finally, the first words he utters in this scene, just get out of the way to the Master, as he's realised he can do the right thing without killing the Rassilon or the Master, as he shoots the machine which controls the diamond, which breaks the link, therefore getting rid of Gallifrey. Oh, I forgot to mention Gallifrey's here, but obviously you should know that if you're watching this review. But just David Tennant. God, I'm really incoherent right now because I've just come out of Part 2 and I'm really in a bit of a mess emotionally. But yeah, it is just fantastic. And the way you get the music playing, this triumphant music after, the Master's disappeared and the Doctor's disappeared. And actually, that's the other thing. When the Master succeeds with, and, escapes with Rassilon, I love the power of him also saying, get out of the way. As it's almost a way of him like supporting the Doctor and going, no, because Rassilon is about to kill the Doctor, and the Master stops him. And it's a nice moment. It's the kind of thing which I like from the Master. I want him to be used as more of a complex character, which is why Missy is such a good character, and why it's really odd how we have the Master now, not even acting like anything with Missy even happened, but it is really good here. But not long after this, I've mentioned it, we have triumphant music and the Doctor's, saying, I'm still alive, and that whole rotating shot is brilliant, as then it just stops zooming in on, as it zooms in on him, as you hear the 4 knocks. And I remember that absolutely killing me as a kid, as even though I knew he was going to regenerate, I almost felt for a second, no, he's not going to regenerate and we're going to get a new series. As a kid, I almost thought that, because of the way everything was so good and the master had gone and everything was so nice and they've won the day, everything's fine. No, it isn't. And after all the ways he could have died, especially because it's the fact that of the 4 knocks, you expect it to be the master and it's not, and it's Wilf, and it's just so tragic for the Doctor, as he knows he's got to sacrifice himself to save Wilf. He has to. He knows he has to the entire time. That kind of tantrum that he throws after it, people say, oh, why would he even consider it? No, that's him not considering it. That's him throwing a tantrum over the fact that he has to do it. He knows he will not do it. He will not walk away. He knows he will do that. And one thing people never really realise is this is one of the youngest incarnations of the Doctor. Really. When I say that, I mean like the duration of him actually being an incarnation in between 9 and 11. It's one of the shortest incarnations the Doctor ever has. When you consider the age that he says he is. He says he's like 903 or 902 or 901 or whatever when he's the 9th Doctor. And the 10th Doctor says he's like 907 or 906. So it's like not a long time. And then, the 11th Doctor is like thousands and thousands and thousands of years. And, Capaldi is, if you want to count heaven 10, billions of years old. So yeah, he's the short, you can see why he has that kind of tantrum, because it makes sense of the line, I could do so much more. Because he's not ready to change. Now, when the Doctor goes in and sacrifices himself in the kind of doors, in the kind of nuclear bolt thingy, when he's covering his face and, you can see all the red light and everything, when I first watched this as a kid, I assumed that was the regeneration. And he was going to walk out as Matt Smith. And I thought that would have been cool. But no, that's not what happens. But, not long after this, he goes to collect his reward. And, yeah, this is where the tears are coming in. So, I haven't made any notes for this. All I've made is notes of names and who he goes to visit. So, the Doctor begins this kind of meeting of old companions and old friends with Martha and Mickey. And it is nice, as they're kind of continuing where you expect their characters to continue in kind of doing work, outside of Unit and Torchwood, which is kind of where they leave off in Journey's End. It's weird that they're together. It's weird that they're a couple and they're married, because, I've heard many people say the last time you see Martha, she's engaged. So it's just kind of like, I'm going to ditch this guy and just be with, Mickey. It's just a bit, why? We don't see anything on screen to give any evidence as to why they're together. But yeah, no, they are, I guess. But it's just the beginning of, the way the Doctor is just in the distance, saves their lives, and just kind of walks off without saying anything. And somehow they all kind of know what it means. He's just kept saying hi and goodbye for the last time to all of them before he regenerates. And it is a lovely little moment. And I've got to say, before I carry on with this, watching Death to the Doctor, well, not is it Death to the Doctor or Death of the Doctor? Which is the... what is it? It's the Sarah Jane story, which features Matt Smith. And also, Jo Grant makes a return. Katie Manning makes a return to Doctor Who. And in that, the Doctor explains to Jo Grant that he still kind of visited all of them. He didn't visit Jo Grant, but he kind of... I think he made some sort of visit to her to understand where she was in life and everything. And he visited all of them. He says he visited every single one, which kind of extends this scene a lot. So I don't know where, I should fit in, but I'll just talk about what's on screen. But he then visits Sarah Jane, and this really, really hurts me. This one really makes me cry. And it didn't make me cry as much when it first aired, but it does now, mainly due to the fact that Elizabeth Sladen is no longer with us. And this is her last ever appearance in Doctor Who, and it really hurts me, because she was a real childhood hero growing up, and I love the Sarah Jane Adventures, and I love Elizabeth Sladen. She's a fantastic woman, and yeah, Doctor Who's not going to be the same without her, and it's really sad that she's gone, but... it's a lovely little scene. You also get Luke Smith in there. It's really nice, and it's nice that the last ever shot of her in Doctor Who is her smiling. She's almost about to cry looking at the sight of the Doctor, but then she starts smiling, just because she's seeing him, and that's very much Sarah Jane, and she's a fantastic character, and I can't help but associate the character with the actual, actor in this instance. I see them as the same, and I love them. But just after this, we have Jack, a character who I will disassociate the character from the actor at the moment, because the actor is done in my eyes. I don't want to see his face ever again. But this character is a very good character, and I love Captain Jack as a character. But this scene is just a really nice scene, because the Doctor, his way of saying goodbye to Jack is actually setting him up for a one-night stand, effectively. It's the only time he won't say, stop it to him. He sets him up with Alonso, and it's a nice little moment, because all he does is just go, yeah, see ya. And it's nice, because I think Jack does understand in that instance as well. But it's the one after this, it's the visit after this, which really begins the proper flow of tears, when he visits a character by the name of Verity Lambert, which is obviously the same name as the first producer of Doctor Who. This era, there are subtle hints throughout here of, Verity and Sydney. And even in the story, Human Nature, Family Blood, which is in this scene, linked to, Verity and Sydney are referenced. The original people working on Doctor Who. And so he visits Verity Lambert, who is like a granddaughter, I think great-granddaughter, of Joan Redfern from Human Nature and Family Blood. And she's selling, the Journal of Impossible Things as a book. And the way the Doctor walks up to her and just says, was she happy in the end? And then after, she says, yes, she was, were you? And you just see his mouth quiver a little bit. And it just breaks me. It really breaks me. Because it's just so sad. And it's the fact that the Doctor's smiling as well. It's just really sad. And I feel like I'm going to break into tears again. But I won't. I'm going to soldier on. So, just after this, obviously, he revisits Donna. She's having her wedding and he wants to see it. And this is a lovely little scene. I just want to mention here just the moment which really gets me, which is the fact that the Doctor gives them a wedding present, which is just a lottery ticket, which has been paid for with a quid which he borrowed from Geoffrey Noble, which is obviously Donna's dad, Sylvia's husband, who is in The Runaway Bride and was meant to actually be in Series 4 and be kind of the placement of Wilf. But the actor died, so it's not only a really nice moment for the actor to respect the actor's death, but also the actual character, and it's a lovely moment. The scene ends, with Wilf giving his salute to the Doctor, and it really does get me, this scene, it really does. But just after this we have Rose, and I've said it before, I don't really care that much about Rose, but this scene really hurts, and the main reason is just because the Doctor goes, once he finds out it's 2005, the line, I bet you're going to have a really great year, and it just really hurts me. And it's hard talking about this story because Tennant was my Doctor. He was my Doctor. And as a result, I can never watch this story in a way anyone else can. If Tennant's not your Doctor, you're not going to watch it the same way as me. And experience things in the same way as me, because I can't help but go back into the mindset of me being 7 years old watching this for the first time. And it's, to this day, it's the only piece of media which I've watched repetitively and had the exact same reaction to every single time I've watched it. And it really does hit me hard. But yeah, I've got to move on a little bit, so that's it. With all the companions, he regenerates, the whole I don't want to go line, and then you see Matt Smith and it's done. And if I had to give this story a score out of 10, I'd give it an 8. I'd give it an 8 out of 10. The part 2. So, 8 is a 8 and a 6. Does that become a... I don't want to make it a 7. I'm going to make it a 7.5. I'm giving this two-parter a 7.5 out of 10. Hopefully you agree. If you don't, comment below, say why. It's not one of my favourite episodes. It's not in my top 5 Tennant stories, I don't think. But, it's always had an impact on me, and that means they've done their job writing. But it's weird watching this now, as this is the last episode Russell T Davies ever wrote for Doctor Who. And, it's brought me to tears every single time I've watched it. And the last thing I saw written by Russell T Davies brought me to tears, which was It Says In, and He's a fantastic writer. He just gets, he writes characters so well, not just the Doctor, but just human beings and normal people very well. And I can't wait for him to come back, but I'm pretty sure that's the end of the review, and I need to shut it off here. So, what did you think? Comment below, all that stuff. If you like the video, then, it makes sense. Drop a like, please. Also, if you like this content, all the stuff I do, and you want to check my channel out, please do. If you like that kind of stuff, subscribe. As well, you can ding the bell for notifications, so you'll be notified every time I upload. But, just FYI, I'm uploading every day until Christmas Eve. So I've uploaded from the 11th of December to Christmas Eve, 14 days of Doctor Who, not Christmas. And he stumbled there. But, yeah, check all my content out. It's really good. I've got all my Flux reviews. I've got the Edge of Reality gameplay and other fun stuff before that. A lot of the stuff before that was just news related for Series 13. But yeah, check all that stuff out. And yeah, that is it. It feels weird. I almost didn't want to do this tonight. I wanted to postpone the review tonight and do it tomorrow, but I've finally done it. Got it over with. Got it over and done with. I've been the Bored Whovian, and I'll see you around. Merry Christmas.